this man's in the papers, there's been news. I want to talk about this subject called tritium. Tritium is hydrogen that has a couple extra neutrons in it, and it's radioactive mildly. It emits a beta particle. We have a plant in Illinois called Braidwood, and in Braidwood, back in '98 and 2000, we had a pipe that spilled, a breaker, a vacuum valve busted, and put several million gallons of radioactive water on the ground. We told our regulator, we told the Illinois EPA, we did a lousy job of talking to our community about that spill. And 5 years later, 6 years later, in 2005, we realized that that water had settled into the ground and gotten in groundwater, and that there were elevated levels of tritium in the groundwater. And we told people at that point that we did what a responsible corporation should do. We apologized, we cleaned it up, we took steps to make sure it won't happen again, and we became an industry leader in groundwater monitoring and reaching out to the community. Let me tell you, the lesson that we learned the very hard way is this was not a health and safety issue to anybody. Nobody came close to having a health issue here. This was a communications problem, and we messed up because we didn't keep our community informed, and people were surprised when they learned about this. That will not happen here. It will not happen here because we learned the hard way, and because we are a leader now in groundwater monitoring, and we understand these issues, and it's caused us to take a look at our practices, ground, air, environmental, otherwise, to ensure that we earn the trust of our host community. We've got to earn that back at Braidwood, and we'll continue to earn it back at Braidwood. And that is tritium in a nutshell, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about that at any time. So, this is a picture of what our plant could look like. It's a single unit, but there'll be two. I want you to notice that there's no big cooling towers. The symbol of nuclear energy, which is a tower that puts steam out from the condenser, isn't going to be here, right? We don't need it, it's too expensive, and we can have some other smaller cooling towers that you see in the back, plus the cooling lane. So you won't see those big towers on the horizon here in Victoria. We do, at this site, the land that it sits on, the COLA will have meteorological data, geological data, seismic data, water. We'll study what happens to a hurricane, and that'll all be public. This one unit, there's going to be two of them, right? Is going to require 460,000 cubic yards of concrete, 446,000 tons of reinforcing steel, 25,000 tons of structural steel, 260,000 linear feet of large pipe, and I could go on and on. It's also going to require some rebar, and I brought a little sample of rebar. You're used to seeing rebar about like this. The rebar that gets used in the containment of a nuclear plant is about that thick. And I'll show you in a minute how much concrete goes into that from a safety and security. My point in telling you all this is you have businesses here. We're going to need help. We're going to need supplies, we're going to need labor, and you all are going to, in part, supply some of that. This is a picture of the overall plant. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it gives you a sense that it's just that from the outside, it's a warehouse-type looking building. There's a lot of water involved in the safety cooling systems, and there's a vessel and a fuel pool and a control room. But this is an overall picture of what it looks like. I want to talk about safety and security. We can go forward. So I mentioned to you the barriers to keep the radiation, and this is a bigger picture of it. The fuel is actually contained in the fuel rods in the center of the reactor. There's a metal cladding around those, and the fuel are little pellets of uranium. And so inside the cladding, that's the first barrier. Then you've got a reactor vessel of steel that can be anywhere from 4 to 8 inches thick, surrounded by 4-foot thick concrete, and then another drywall wall of 5-foot thick concrete with a containment vessel of steel about 1.5 inches and 3 more feet of concrete reinforced around it. That's the containment. It is designed to withstand tremendous pressure and tremendous temperature, as well as hurricanes. Well, I guess I'll show you a picture of the containment wall here in a second. Security, terrorism, 9/11. Since 9/11, Exelon spent more than $150 million upgrading our plants. If you've ever been to a prison, which I have, I practiced law for a while, criminal law, it's harder to get in and out of a prison. I'm sorry, it's easier to get in and out of a prison than it is to get in and out of a nuclear power plant. These things are robust in their security. We have armed guards, we have vehicle barriers, we have razor wire, we have electronic motion sensing, we have a lot of security measures, and we run training exercises, and we run drills constantly. Elected officials who come to our power plant and who may have said, I'm worried about terrorism, they come out and they say, wow. And that's all they say. This is an inside of one of our plants. There's some feed water heaters, but you can see the concrete containment structures that this thing is full of concrete. Keep going, going. From an airplane perspective, in addition to the containments being designed to withstand a crash, I'll show you something about that in a minute, it's a hard target to hit. So I just put this up here to show you that even if someone were to try, and you could hurt a lot of people, a lot more people hitting other targets, but even if you were to try, you're hitting a small target. I want to talk about emergency preparedness while I have this slide up, because communities that have nuclear power plants tend to have, not tend, they do have the most robust emergency preparedness systems in the country. This community already has them. You're in hurricane country. We are already working with the 3 county emergency responders to bolster the emergency operations and the emergency preparedness that already exists, and we think will add significantly to that for whatever type of emergency that can come up, whether it's terrorism, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's nuclear incidents. This community will be prepared, as are all communities who have nuclear power. So here's the picture I was showing. This is just what a concrete wall is. One of the walls is about 4 feet thick with this really thick rebar. So that gives you an idea that it's not just some slurry concrete formed out and poured in there. This is robust. It's one of the reasons why it takes a long time to build. So I want to conclude with a video picture that I think says a lot about the ability of the containment to handle the crash. There's some foreign language. This is a film from a foreign country, but it's based on a United States test. You're going to see an F4 fly into a wall that's the actual specs of nuclear, of one level of the nuclear containment. And you're going to see what happens to the wall, and you're going to see what happens to the jet. I've covered a lot of ground. There's so much more we can talk about, but after this, I'm going to stop and take some questions. So Bill, if you run the video.
Time for a new test using an F4 Phantom jet. The US government wanted to test what would happen if a plane crashed into the concrete walls of a nuclear power station. The jet sets off, bolted to a track to prevent takeoff. It's doing 500 miles an hour. The plane atomized with the impact. It just disappeared into dust. Only the tips of the wings were sent totally detached. But the wall designed to move and absorb energy did its job well. When dealing with nuclear material, no test can ever reach results.
So that's one test on one little piece of wall. You saw the wall barely moved and the jet was gone. Obviously, we don't know what can happen in the world we live in. We do our best to try to protect against every scenario we can think of. We're the most regulated industry in America for a reason, and we live up to those standards, and we expect you to hold us accountable to those standards. But what we're asking from you is a fair hearing, a fair opportunity to make our case, listen to what we have to say, and as I said at the beginning, if you learn about this stuff, it's not so scary, and you'll start to see the benefit, and you get comfortable with it, and we look forward to a very long relationship once we decide to come here. Thank you very much.